My name is Patrick LeBlanc, and this evening we're going to talk about Power BI and Azure Analysis Services. All right. I work for Microsoft. I'm some kind of architect, a data platform architect for Microsoft. I'm a co-host on a YouTube channel called Guy on the Cube. I tweet a little bit, and I work with SQL Server and Azure. That's what I do every day, all day. All right. I'm going to start this conversation with one of the videos that I did a while ago, and actually I had a guest star, my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, and we were talking about data silos and centralized models. And so it was interesting. The way this whole session came about was actually a series of customer visits. My customers, what they do is they use Power BI to create their data models. And so let's say, for example, I can't see you guys show hands, but you guys know Power BI, right? Yeah.
Most of us do, yeah.
And so they use Power BI to import data and create these semantic layers on top of these disparate data sources. And what's interesting is when you talk to different customers, they say, well, here's the scenario, Patrick. Somebody from the finance department comes up and they like the data model. They don't want the reports, so what do I do? And so this is a real screen cap from someone with a customer I was working on. They know I did screen cap. It's the exact same PBI X file, but if you take a look at the size, it's the size. So basically what they're doing is they copy the PBI X and recreate the reports for that specific subject matter. Sometimes they change, maybe add a measure, add a calculated column, but basically they have these little silos of data. And I think it's just insanity. It's crazy. Why would somebody do this? It's not, it's not very efficient. Like I tell my wife this a lot. I go, I'm not lazy, lady. I'm just really efficient. And she doesn't believe me. She says I'm just lazy. That's okay. Anyway, so what do you do? How do you get out of this kind of like silo hell that create it for yourself? And that was the question for the customer. And I was like, come with me on the journey, right? And so before we went on that journey, we started talking about the challenges of having these data sources, managing changes. What if I ask everybody that's attending to calculate a graduation rate? How many different calculations do we come up with? And then how do we centralize that calculation? How do we maintain the changes in that calculation? What if we wanted to use other reporting tools? What about refreshing large data volumes, managing security? All these things, when you have these multiple copies of the data silos, of the PBI X files, how do you manage this stuff? It's a very, very challenging thing. And so her and I chatted for, it must have been 2 hours about this. And one of the things the first step was, she said, I want to create a data warehouse. And I was like, that's interesting. That's great. We actually did build a data warehouse, not a definite requirement, but definitely something that gives you another layer of data governance and ensuring the purity, that's what I like to use, of the data, right? But we eventually landed on Azure Analysis Services. Are you guys still there?
Yes, I muted the microphone because we were getting some feedback here.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure you're the studio. Okay, perfect. So we eventually landed at Azure Analysis Services. A lot of people don't even know about Azure Analysis Services, and the very first time I used it was honestly with this customer. We started tinkering around and we got it to work, and everything was we modified the model, added a new measure, refreshed the reports, and bam, everything was there. It was just phenomenal. And so what is Azure Analysis Services? It is pretty much SQL Server Analysis Services Enterprise Edition. It's supported only in the tabular mode. That's what it is. It's so you could take a tabular model on premises today, open up Visual Studio, right-click, deploy directly to Azure AS, and you get the same features and capabilities: direct query, partitioning, row-level security, lots of different things. It's just all baked into it. There are 3 different types. There's the Developer Edition, the Basic Edition, and the Standard Edition. The Developer Edition is a really cheap edition that you can use to do exactly what it says, develop. And then the Standard Edition is when you're going live. There's a query processing unit, kind of like the DW with the data warehouse, or the DTU with the SQL database. It's a measure relative computational performance, for queries and things like that and data processing. And so to be honest with you guys, I've never used the basic tier because I'm always creating partitions with my customers. We have a large volume of data and we like to use those partitions to kind of minimize our processing time. All right, just to give you a little to understand what the pricing looks like. If you run a developer instance for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it'll cost you $98 a month. Now, this is without optimizing, your costs, without doing the one important thing that's available in Azure Analysis Services, which really kind of sets it apart from on-prem analysis services, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. So how do you get this provision? How do you create a Azure Analysis Services? Well, just like any other Azure resource, you have to have you need a subscription, Azure Active Directory. You need to create a resource group, and I'll show you all that stuff here in just a little bit. And so you can do it three ways. You can provision it using the portal, click, and I'll show you how to do that. You can use PowerShell, which is really easy. A lot of my customers are doing this because they can use it to spin them up really quickly and then destroy them just as fast as they brought it up. But it's using the exact same SKUs and making sure they're putting it in the same resource group and things like that. And then you can also use an ORM template using Visual Studio, which honestly, I like it more over PowerShell. I like to use Visual Studio a little more. That's just me. I developed for a couple of years before I actually stumbled in the data. And then you can also use the Web Designer, which is in preview. There's some limitations around what you can and can't do, but it's definitely there. All right. And then what I alluded to at the beginning was when you're using Azure Analysis Services, and let's say you're not a 24/7 shop or you're just developing, you can pause it and you're not charged for compute or storage, but because the compute and storage is coupled together in one resource. And so when you click pause, you don't incur any costs at all. Right? So let me show you this. Let me go over to my Azure portal, and all you need to do is choose create a resource. Make sure you have Azure Active Directory and your subscription. Obviously, I'm just using my MSDN subscription here. Just search for it. It'll come up. There it goes. You click it, and then click create, and then you fill out this form. You give it a name, right? We can call this UG, users group. It'll tell us if it's right. Choose your subscription, create a new resource group or use an existing one, choose your location. If you are accessing data, in a data center that is not in Azure and you haven't provisioned in the same location, you need to make sure that you put these, as close as possible to those resources. Select the pricing tier. You can see that there's lots of different pricing tiers here. Not only is it developer, there's 2 basic and mini standard editions out there. You can see them right there. All right. Okay. And then you click create and you specify an administrator. Right. And then you click create, and then in about a minute or so, I'm not going to create one because I already have a couple of them created. Don't want to use all my subscription costs, my subscription money, but you can see right now, once I click it, you can see the overview. This is what it looks like, and you can pause it. I'm not going to pause it because I need it for the demos, but you can pause it if you want to. You can add other administrators. You can manage it. You can scale up. I'll talk about scaling up a little bit. You can do a backup. You got to create a storage account before you do it. And then I don't have one configured here, but you configure your storage account, and then you can set your encryption key, and then you can back it up. And then if you wanted to, you can restore it also. And you can schedule the backups and things like that. And even you can schedule the processing using SQL Server Integration Services, the processing tasks that's out there. All righty. Okay. That's how you provision it. I like it a lot. Connecting to Azure Analysis Services. So it's pretty straightforward. If you have Azure Analysis Services, you have your Azure Active Directory set up. And if you're working on premises, if you set up your AD Connect, you can get all your username and password synced up so you can have a single sign-on. And it pretty much works the same way as on premises when you use client tools. So the same client tools that you use to connect to on-premises analysis services are the same ones you can use today. So SQL Server Data Tools, Power BI Desktop, SQL Server Management Studio, or whatever third-party tools you want to use in addition to Excel and things like that. It uses the same client libraries to establish that connection. All right. And it just basically works. And these guys right here, this guy's my favorite. When I found this picture, I said I'm going to use in every presentation I do because he's like just super happy, just like me when I first started doing it. In fact, you can even use Azure Analysis Services. So when you're using SQL Server data tools to create your semantic model, you can actually use, and you have that choice to go integrated mode or workspace mode. You can actually use Azure Analysis Services as your workspace workspace server if you don't want to use integrated mode where it does everything on the file system for you. All right. So let me show you how you connect up to this thing. So the first thing we got to do, and I thought I did it, but I didn't, is open up Power BI Desktop. Once you open up Power BI Desktop, you simply go to your Azure AS and you'll see two different server names. You'll see a server name and a management server name. You use the server name to connect, to develop, and do things like that with, and you use the management name for processing and other things like that. All right, so we'll click here, and there we go. We have the name, and then we'll go over to Power BI, and you can see the desktop is open. And I'm just going to simply click Get Data, choose More, and the connector for it actually just came out of preview. And you choose Azure Analysis Services, you click Connect. Watch this though. I want you to pay attention to what happens right here. I'm going to go ahead and put in that server name, and you'll see you have two choices right here. And it drives me crazy when I see people use import, because I've spent all this time designing this semantic model for you, and you choose import, write a query, and only pull specific data, when if you connect live, you get the whole model and you can begin the query. And so one valid reason for doing that, if you want to mingle other data sets with your analysis services. So right now, you can't have like a composite model where you live connect and then do caching, import data. That's not supported in the desktop just yet. And so once you go live, so we're going to go live here on this model. And what it's going to do when we go live, it's going to say, hey, how do you want to connect? Can I connect with my Microsoft account to my GuiaCube analysis services? Stay tuned. I'm going to show you. You'll see if you can. So I'm going to click put authenticate, get signed in. And once I get signed in, you see it shows me two models. I can choose either one that I want, click OK. And then what will happen is a couple of things going to happen to Power BI Desktop. You'll get your, I don't know why it's taking so long. I was thinking about it. There we go. You'll get your field list. For the model, you'll see the pivot field list. I like to call it, people hate when I say that. You'll see down at the bottom, it's live connected. But right here on the left-hand side, you'll notice that you only have one icon. And that is because when you are using a live connection to analysis services, the desktop becomes a pure visualization tool. The only modification that you can do is create report level measures. So if I went here, I can actually create my own measure, but that measure is contained within this report. If I publish this report, it doesn't modify the semantic model and add that measure to it. It's kind of like my own measure, and anyone I give access to who can edit the workspace where I publish Power BI, they can use that measure. It's not available or accessible outside that report. Okay, does that make sense? Hope so. All right. And now all I'm doing is saying, let me see the quantity, and you'll see a little spinny little thing right there. I'm using the D1, and there's my values. And then I can say, let me take a look at them by color. And there you go, right? Just that simple. And I'm connected up to analysis services. It's great. I love it. I did say that. I did just say I love it. What about, I want to ask you guys a question. If you are working externally, let's say you hired a consultant, maybe you guys have a question.
I just flipped our microphone back on because you were going to ask us a question.
Yes, I'm about to ask you guys a question. So let me ask you a question. So let's say you are a state agency and you have all the agencies in the state connected. You have one access to your model, and your model's in one domain, and each agency has its own domain. How do you allow them to access your own service?
See a lot of.
You can set it up with email, right? So if they have their email address, they can authenticate through that. I cheated because I read up on this today, so.
He came prepared for class. That's no fair.
All right. So using Azure Analysis Services, you can have access to B2B. And so using B2B, I can connect. I can invite people to my Azure Active Directory with lots of different types of domains. And once I invite them to my Azure Active Directory, I can grant them access. And let me show you guys how to do this. I can grant them access to my model. I can set up role level security or dynamic role level security. I can make someone, let's say I have a third party that's going to do some development for me on my Azure AS. I can make them an administrator and allow them to then develop out models and things like that. And it uses a very similar authentication. It just goes through Azure Active Directory, and I'll show you. I'll go to my AD. I'll invite an account to it, and then once that account is invited, you get an email. Once you accept the invitation, then I can begin to apply security to you. All right, it's pretty cool. So let me show you two things. I kind of skipped. I was wondering why I was so far ahead, but I want to show you first how you create models in Azure AS, because that question came up with my customer. She's like, Patrick, I don't develop tabular models. I've never used Visual Studio, SQL Server data tools. That's not something I do, but I know how to use Power BI Desktop. And so the first thing I said was, if you're using the Power BI Desktop to import data and write DAX and use Power Query, you know how to design semantic models. So you're already one step ahead of the game. I say, now you just need to learn how to use Visual Studio. She goes, nope, not installing Visual Studio. I don't want to use it. I don't want to see it. I was like, okay, all right. But she still wants to design tabular models. So I have this one right here, this model that I created. It's cached up. It's imported. And I want to convert this to a tabular model. I don't want to use data tools. I don't want to recreate it step by step, import it and things like that, starting from scratch, right? So how could she do this if she didn't want to start from scratch? All she needs to do is go out to her web portal here, go to her instance of AS, and you'll see right here where it says Web Designer Preview. You click Open. Once you click Open, if you have existing models, you can query those models. You can open them in Visual Studio, and I'll talk about that and things like that. And guys, and so, but what you can do is you can click Add and type in a name, Users Group. Let's just call this one Users Group, and click Power BI Desktop. And if I go to that file and click Open, and choose import. I got an error when I did this earlier, so hopefully we don't get the same error. I choose import. In just a few short, maybe a minute, maybe 60 seconds, the model will completely upload. It will take all of the contents and the data, and now it's converted into a semantic model. And so basically, look, I spelled internet wrong. Internet sales. I can click here, and then I can do the same thing what I did with the color, right? And then you go run, and you can see my data. And you can also model this out. You can create measures and do all different types of things here in the Web Designer. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't use the Web Designer very much, but I said, the only way to modify this, like if I made changes in the desktop, I literally have to delete the model and re-upload the model. Again, not very efficient for me. And so I told her, I was like, look, you got to use Visual Studio just a little bit. So all you need to do is go here, grab the server name, and once you grab the server name, you got two choices. Okay, you can click right here and say Open in Visual Studio. It's going to download a zip file. You extract it, you open it, and then you got that. Or what I like to do, because it seems to be a little more efficient to me, is I go File, New Project, and the latest data tools or Visual Studio, whatever it is now these days. I remember Bids. I really like Bids a lot. And they started doing all this fancy stuff. That's why I don't like Visual Studio. You see that right there? Not responding. There we go. You choose Import from Server. So you expand Business Intelligence, click Analysis Services, and then choose the very last option. Click OK. And so right here, if you want to, you can use Integrated Workspace, which will handle everything locally, or you can choose your workspace server. I'm just going to choose Integrated Workspace and click OK. And then it's going to say, hey, what's the server? And then when I click away, it should give me an authentication prompt. And then I'm going to go ahead and get authenticated. Click sign in, and then it'll say, hey, here's your databases. I'll choose Users Group and click OK. And then in a few seconds, it's going to be ready to go. Any questions?
So right now you're importing a tabular model that was actually designed in Power BI.
That's right. So I didn't do anything in Data Tools. All I did was went to the web designer, uploaded the model, it converted it for me, and then I used this to extract it out. And the funny thing, I have customers that are using that developer edition of Azure AS, and they upload it, extract it out, delete the instance, and then deploy on premises, and it still works. And all you need to do is you'll get 2 data sources, and I'm never quite sure which one do I need to go and change here, but I'm going to go edit and edit right here and put in my database credentials. If I can remember them. We'll see when I try to process. So we'll go here to model. Once it finishes thinking, and say process all. See what happens. I choose the right one. I did not. Sorry. I must be putting in the wrong password. Oh, all right. There we go. So then it'll process, and then you can process this with Azure automation jobs. You can I put in the wrong password, but anyway, you can process this with Azure automation jobs. You can process this with SSIS or just PowerShell. You can do whatever you want, and it pretty much connects up pretty quickly. Yeah, I just need to put in the right username and password. But that's it. Now you have the model, you have the schema, and if you want to, you go, where's my Solution Explorer? Let's go View, Solution Explorer. Where are you? There we go. And go to Properties, and then I can change. See, right now, it's going back. It's going to this particular model, which is not the one I want, right? I give it a name, right? We'll call it Users Group. Give it the same. If you want to overwrite the one that's already out there, and make sure you give it the same database name that you did when you uploaded it, and then you right-click deploy. If you had a measure, a calculated column, import in the table, it just overwrites it. Where if you try to upload the same PBIX file over again, you'll get an error if you give it the same database name and say it already exists. And so it would be nice if it said already exists, you want me to replace it or merge the differences or something like that, right? Doesn't do that, but it would be great. But I like to use Visual Studio, and now I have this whole schema, and I can start doing design. I can do partitioning now, because right now the desktop doesn't support partitioning, or I can create KPIs or perspectives. It's a better way for me to manage my roles and things like that. Cool. All right. Questions? All right. I like you guys. You guys are going to make this decision.
All right, no questions.
All right. So let's go back to B2B. B2B is really interesting for me because before I started my new role on January the 2nd, I worked just for education, the Microsoft team that focuses on education. And we had a state agency, Los Angeles Unified School District, and they wanted to build something like this. They wanted to have a central analysis services model that they published the Power BI report to in powerbi.com, and then they wanted, see, their connections, their domain is Contoso, but then all their school districts had different domains, and they wanted to share these reports out because they kept all the data here, and all the school district would need to do was buy some type of Power BI licensing, Power BI Pro licensing at a minimum, or they could buy capacity or whatever they want. And then we would share those reports out with them, and then they could just use their own credentials as opposed to us managing and maintaining a separate set of credentials, and so they can access the model. But what we did here, because when I wrote this blog post, that feature, that business-to-business capability wasn't available. And what I had to do was use this map username. And that is a very tedious thing, especially when principals constantly are, it's like a revolving door. They're changing jobs, they're getting fired and things like that. So managing and maintaining that is a challenge. Adam, actually, my co-host on the Guy in the Cube channel, he actually has a video on how to make that easier if anyone's interested. All right. But you don't need that anymore. What you can do now is, let's say, I have a principal that I need to give access to the model. I have the model here, right? The connection string for it. All I need to do now is go over to Management Studio. And let me do one thing before I do that. Let me do one thing. So if you look right here, there's an option for Analysis Services Administrators. I'm going to get rid of this guy right here, P. LeBlanc at Microsoft.com. I'm going to get rid of him because I don't want him to be an administrator. We're going to give him a different role, right? So we're going to go over to Management Studio and cross our fingers because I haven't done this demo in a while, but we'll see how it works out. Nothing better than a live demo, right? So we'll get connected. And so using Management Studio, I forgot to mention something. Hang on one second. So when you connect up using Management Studio, oh, I broke it. Come on. Probably faster to open a new one. Sorry, guys. I just wanted to cancel it. It's a little temperamental tonight. Yep, it stopped working. There we go. Here we go. So when you connect to a database, Analysis Services engine, there's a couple of choices right here. Don't choose the first two. Always choose this guy right here. All right. Active Directory Universal with MFA. All right. Didn't like my cancel. Then you click connect. And, maybe I'll have to, oh wait, wrong server. There we go. Click connect. Enter your password. All right. So I have my authenticating using Azure Active Directory, and I'm using Management Studio to manage my model. So now here's my databases. So here's my users group database. There's my roles, right? I'm going to go here, say new role. And I'm going to call this my red role. You guys watch Game of Thrones, like the Red Wedding, right? So we go here, add someone. We get this nice new, I got to get authenticated up because it recognizes. Then I can start searching for people that are P. LeBlanc. There we go. There's P. LeBlanc. There's P. LeBlanc at Microsoft. Let's go ahead and add that guy. Actually, not who I wanted to add, but okay. Let's see what happens when I do that. And you can also, let me go back to add. You can also invite people. So if I wanted to invite a new user, right, it'll take me out to my portal. I'm not going to do all that, but it'll take me out to my Azure Active Directory, and then I will show you in the portal itself, though. So if I'm in Analysis Services, I will go to add right here, and then I can choose invite, and then I enter your email address. If it's Gmail, if it's something like that, it'll send you an email. It'll add a record to my Azure Active Directory, and then once you accept it, then I can start your account. I can start using your account to assign roles and permissions. And so we'll go back over here. I think yep. And then go to row filters, and then you add a row filter. And I don't know the column names here. Product, color, I don't know. Right? Something like that. That's probably not going to be valid. But then what I could do is, that person would only see red, but because I think my DAX is wrong, right? We'll assume that this is right and see what happens when I authenticate. So now someone not in my organization, P. LeBlanc at Microsoft is not in the organization. That person is not part of Guy in the Cube at all. Can literally, if I did everything right, that username didn't look right. It looked a little suspect, but we'll give it a go anyway. What you can do is get data, Azure Analysis Services, click OK. And then when I go to authenticate, I'm going to cross my fingers because I think I did something wrong, but we'll see. It's okay. I like live demos. You always learn stuff doing them, right? Choose Microsoft. See what happens. I authenticate, right? It shows me I only have access to one model, not all the models, like the administrator. Get connected. And let's see what happens when it actually does populate that field list for me. All right, so I'm live connected. I'm going to choose quantity, and maybe my DAX query is a little right. We'll see. Oh, there we go. But let's see what color products I have access to. All right, so now you guys can see I only have access to what? The red products, because I put that row level security, that DAC statement that limited this user to only red, right? And I can do some dynamic things around this if I want to, right? I can build out dynamic row level security using a table-based structure. So when Patrick signs in, he can see, you know, red, yellow, and green. I don't know, right? Any questions?
Anyone?
I hope I'm not boring you guys.
Nope.
Okay. Hope I'm not boring you guys. Okay. Nope. Let's move on. Move forward. So what happens when you need more resources? If you think about SQL Server today or analysis services or any type of backend data system, how do you ensure that you have sufficient resources? So let's say you reach that threshold, right? You reach the threshold and you need more servers. You need more capacity. You know, if I'm on premises with, you know, SQL Server, it's in the VM, right? I can add more memory, I can add more CPU, but what if I want to scale out? You know, what if I want to add some read-only nodes or some processing nodes to my Azure Analysis Services, or kind of scale out those resources a little bit? It's great. You can do this, you can scale up or you can scale out. So you can go from a little Shetland pony, you know, to a big Clydesdale, right? And so let me show you how this works. You go out to your portal here, not this portal, that's my Microsoft portal. You go here and you choose, see where, pricing tiers first. If you want to scale up, you can, here's the limitation. So I'm going to choose view all here. So if I'm in basic, I can go up and down within basic. So if I'm on B2, I can go down to B1. If I'm on B1, I can go up to B2. If I go from B2 to S0, I can't go back to B2 anymore. I only can go from within the pricing tier or up a pricing tier. I can't go down a pricing tier. So I can scale up to from S0 to S4 and then back down. If I need more query processing units, a larger cache, you know, that type of stuff. You can see they can get pretty pricey running these things. Now, what if you want to scale out, have multiple servers behind the scenes so you can kind of have a load balance going, a round robin load balance, especially when you're processing your models, because oftentimes when we're processing our models, people can't connect as efficiently as they want. And so what you can do is, I can't do it right now, I need to upgrade this into a standard pricing tier, but I can just slide this over and say I want, you know, 3 nodes and I want to have a separate processing tier. So what that means is when I run SSIS or Azure Automation to process my cube or my partitions or whatever I'm processing, all the read activity will happen on my replicas and the processing will happen on that processing node. And then once it's all done, it'll synchronize those nodes. And then you can script all this stuff out and say, okay, get rid of the processing node. I only want one replica. I only did that because I want to quickly process this stuff. And then I want to go back to my normal configuration. And so it's just a little slider that you slide back and forth, up and down to scale out. But you got to be in at least a standard pricing tier. Right? Any questions? Okay. I didn't give you a lot of time to ask questions. So,
I got a question.
Oh, we got a question.
So
all right, awesome.
when you're scheduling it out, how do you said there's 2 different methods? Like, what are the differences between them?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
You're going to process one of the nodes. There's the integration services, automation, and then there's the.
So the first thing you got to do is use and I hope I make. So when you set this up, you specify which node you want for processing, and then all the other replicas, they call replicas, not nodes, sorry, will be used for reading during the processing time, right? And then over here, you use this connection string. Don't use the one I've been using to connect. You use this one because it'll automatically handle just going to the processing node as opposed to going to one of your back-end replicas. And you would also use this one to do the synchronization after the processing is done. If you use this one, it won't work that way. Answer your question.
Okay, yeah, he's happy.
All right, awesome. So The last thing, and this kind of draws out a little bit, and I already ran the PowerShell script because the PowerShell script sometimes takes a long time to run, but I want to walk you through. So the lady hit me with this huge question. She just kind of punched me in my face after I got through talking about data silos and getting rid of them. So I said, okay, you centralize. Now what? I said, what do you want to do? And she was like, well, I need to recreate all my reports because they were all cached up now. Now I have this wonderful analysis service model, so I got to rebuild all my reports. So she had all these reports, and she was going to go manually rebuild them because in the desktop, I can't switch from a live connected model to a cache model. There's no way to say, hey, I'm cached up. So if I go to the desktop and I have my cache model, I have this, let's just use the model itself. I have my cache model right here. And so I say, well, I want to switch this to, live connection. Can't do it. Even if you go into if you edit the queries and go inside of it, you just can't do it. A friend of mine actually figured out, his name is Dustin. I'll show you guys this because this was pretty cool what he figured out. And we joke and kid with him because the very last thing on the page. So we were at internal Microsoft conference and he's like, we have to figure out a way to convert from, you see it right here, it's pretty cool on his blog post, converting a Power BI desktop file from an import to a live query. And instead of coming to hang out with us, go drinking and stuff like that, because Microsoft was paying, right? He decided to go and do some work. Love this guy. This guy's so ambitious. And so he wrote this blog post. He hacked out how to do it using the PBIX files. He took the .pbix, renamed it to .zip, and that exposed all these files in the .zip file. And then he walked through, the tricky part was going and digging through these files, and then he deleted the data model from the one that was cached and copied the data model from the one that was live into the folder, change it back to PBIX, and it worked. Now, I'm going to say this, and he said this also, right? This is totally not supported by Microsoft or the Power BI team. So if you do this and it breaks, don't call Microsoft. They ain't going to help you. So in the midst of all that, I did some digging myself and I found something, and all that blog post the next day, I came back and I was like, let me show you something. And so there's a PowerShell script, and I'm working on right now trying to create a little Windows form. If somebody else beats me to it, knock yourself out. You can use a REST API to do this. And so basically have this PowerShell script, and it's a little involved, but fortunately somebody wrote it. You can see the documentation for this stuff right here. Use the REST API scripts. You need to follow these instructions at the top. Follow them to a T, because if you don't, it ain't going to work. I think that's how I messed up mine right here. And so basically, you need to do a couple of things. So you have before you can get all of transfer your reports, you need to make sure they're all published to a workspace in Power BI. Okay. Once they're published to a workspace in Power BI, you go out to that workspace. So I'm going to go to my Power BI workspace. I have two workspaces here. At-risk cache, Azure AS PBI cache and Azure AS PBI live. You click this one right here, go to your report and open the report up. Once you open the report up, in the URL of it, it's going to give you two GUIDs. One GUID is for the group. One GUID is for the report ID. You need to copy them and then go back over to the PowerShell script, get the group ID, you paste it here, get the report ID, you paste it there. Okay. And then the next thing you need to do is in this section, you give the report a name. If you're copying to the same location, I give it a different name just so I'll know the copy is actually happening. As a best practice, what I like to do is I actually create a new workspace to do all the copying in. It gives me better peace of mind. Okay. And then you have to go to that workspace. You go to that workspace and you need your data set. Now, what would be ideal is if the product team allowed you to use this get data option, databases, and choose Azure Analysis Services. Not available right now. So what you have to do is you open up the Power BI desktop, you connect to your AS model, you just get a live connection, right? And then you publish it to that workspace. What that's going to give you is a blank report in that workspace, already deleted it, and a data set. And this is the key to everything. Once you have that data set, you go to settings, and you get the group ID of the workspace, and you get the ID of the data set, and then you go back to your PowerShell script. And that's why I'm writing a little Windows app for it, so you can check and choose multiple reports and things like that. And so you type that stuff right here. And then the very last thing you need to do, where is it? That may be why my script wasn't working. You go to apps.power BI. Yeah, Dev, that's why it's not working. Haha, let's go do it. So you go here and you go to, let's just go to my Chrome right here because I'm already authenticated on this guy. You go here, you paste this in, and you sign in. So I'm going to get signed in with my Power BI account. And then what you got to do is you give this a name. You can call this, rebind and move. You choose client app, native, and then there's a piece of code that they give you right here. Make sure you copy all of it. Copy all that. And you paste it right here. And then make sure you choose all the data set operations. I just select them all. But honestly, I tested with these two, and it just works. And then you say register an app. It'll give you this little guy right here. You copy that. And you go back to your PowerShell. You put your client ID in. And like I said, sometimes it takes a little bit to run, so I'm not going to run it. But you just click it. You just click this, run it. It'll require you to authenticate. So you get authenticated. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take that report, copy it as this report, and then bind it to the new data set. And so let's go here. And you can see if I go back to Power BI, there's my report, and there's my new report. And the way to tell if one is live connected or not live connected, if you go to the cache model and look at that report, and you look at the dependencies on it, and you can see it's on the cache data set. But if I go to the settings of that data set, you'll see how the schedule refresh is set up and everything like that. When you're live connected, it doesn't work that way. So if we go back to the live one and go to that report, and go to settings, dependencies, and then go look at the settings for that data source, you'll see that only you can just schedule your cache refresh. You cannot do a schedule refresh connecting to data sources and things like that. And also, when you can connect it, if you want to, right, you can take that report now and do file, download it as a PBIX file. I already did that. And then you'll see down in the bottom right corner, that is absolutely live connected to that new model. And so I've essentially taken all those reports that were pointed to cache models and reconnected them to a live model. Now, the one thing I'll say is before you upload it to Azure Analysis Services, before you begin this rebind, make sure you get some kind of baseline, because as she went through those PBIX files, she saw that one had a measure, the other one had a calculated column that wasn't in one, and she just created them, right? We just went through the model and we added everything, made sure we got as close as we missed a few, but we published it out, we did the reconnection, and then when we started looking through the reports, we saw a few of them that were missing. You get the little ugly X thing because the value isn't there, and we just highlighted it, told us which one, we added that one to the model, republished, and it was ready to go. And so we essentially took her from these 20 odd something data silos to a single semantic model. She got a new skill set to put on LinkedIn and her resume, because now she can design Tableau models using SQL Server data tools. And it took us about 2 days to migrate about, I want to say we moved on the other side of 70 reports and connected up to a live model. So this whole presentation is based on the conversation with her. I can't say who she is and stuff like that because she swore me to secrecy. But it's a pretty good, work for me. Usually there's lots of questions about B2B and stuff like that. So this session usually lasts an hour and a half, but you guys are so quiet and didn't ask me many questions. Actually, surprisingly done. So if you do have any questions, got time for it.
Okay, microphone's back on, boys.
Okay, so when you are setting up the resources for an initial, like for me, I'm coding out hey, if you have a data warehouse, you've got so much data, I don't know how to tell them what I recommend as far as sizing.
For you talking about for the Azure Data Warehouse or for the Tableau model?
for the Azure, for the tabular model in Azure.
Good question.
Analysis services.
So what I do is I always start at an S1. There's no rule of thumb yet right now, and there's also a sizing. If you use Marco's got a Marco. I don't know if you know those guys, the SQL BI guys. They have a product. It's a free one, free download. It'll give you an idea of how big that model is when you bring it in. So what I like to do is I look for a way to slice my data. And so for this particular one, and the reason I have a decent answer for it is because we had to do this. We found that school year was a great way to slice the data. And then we loaded 5 school years in, and we used, it was either this or Casper de Jong. One of them has a way to see the size of the model. And we loaded 5 years in and saw how much memory it was consuming. We didn't concern ourselves with queries at the time. We were just making sure we could get the whole thing to fit into an S1. And it kind of showed us. I'll look those up and put them in the resources of the slide, and I'll send it off, and you can share it. And so it's either these guys or it was Casper. There's an Excel workbook. I know there's an Excel workbook that shows you the size of the model, but I want to say we use one of their tools here to show the size of the model also. And I want to say it was the Vertipack Analyzer that we used. Yeah, that's what it was. We used this tool, and it showed us, for 5 years worth of data, the model was this size, and it was extremely small. And we started off with an S1, and then we used a view. What we did was, I can actually show you a simulation of it. We used the view. Maybe I can't because the data warehouse is not running, but we used the view to kind of create these federated partitions. I know you can do this fancy partitioning, but she wasn't ready to go that far. And so we had like the current year in one partition, and then we had all the previous years. The next 4 years in one, and then all the previous years in another. And we were able to query it and use this view to combine them. And then when we got ready to process live, we just opened the whole view up to all the data. But we knew already, from our estimation, it did take a little work, from our estimation of 5 years, we were able to back in how much we needed. I know that's not, the perfect answer. That's a consulting answer, right? Because I want to get more work, right? But that's how we ended up on it. I don't have a better way yet, but this Vertipack Analyzer was our friend doing it.
I guess that's perfect because I'm a consultant, so a consultant is exactly what I want.
If you got more questions, if just ping me. I'll take my data warehouse off of pause, and I can show you. So it looks like my internet just went down, guys. I don't know if you still can hear me.
Yeah, you're still on this side.
Okay, but it looks like, because they did tell us they're doing some work at around 7-ish. So if you lose me, I didn't hang up. It's just
okay.
Our internet down. All right.
Okay.
Other questions?
Okay, that's a no.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let me repeat. Sorry, I'm so slow at responding to emails.